Welcome to Not Stopping for Directions, a podcast for and about dads, especially those parenting children with behavioral health challenges. I'm your host, Michael Carmen, and this podcast is brought to you by the Kentucky Partnership for Families and Children. The content included should not take the place of clinical or medical advice and are purely points of discussion for you to consider during your parenting journey. All right, this is Not Stopping for Directions, and this is our very first episode of our podcast, and our first guest is Lamont. Lamont, thank you for joining us on our very first try at having a podcast. Appreciate it.
No
All right,
problem.
well, pardon? Go ahead.
No problem. This is my first
Great.
go around too.
There we go. We'll fumble through it together then. Well, first off, tell me a little bit about yourself. You know, what things are you interested in? What have you done as kind of your life's work? Tell me a little bit.
Well, I've kind of been a little bit all over the place. I've been military. Actually finished my bachelor's degree. Actually, I've been to Ford for going on 28 years. I got 27 and a half in now, but as I started working at Ford, I actually went back to college and finished out my degree, got my bachelor's degree in business management. So that was kind of one of my goals of making sure I had a degree. And
awesome.
Pretty much Ford's been my life for almost the last 30 years. So, and I like hobbies as far as I ride motorcycles and try to just get out and just walk around and exercise a little bit every once in a while.
Excellent. Well, Ford is certainly a big employer for Kentucky. And yeah, so you're out there in the outdoors on your motorcycle having a good time. So that's fantastic. Well, I dug up this piece of research from the organization, the Pew Research Center. So I'm going to read you this quote here. And it says, more than 150 years after the 13th Amendment abolished slavery in the United States, most U.S. adults say the legacy of slavery continues to have an impact on the position of Black people in American society today. More than 4 in 10 say the country hasn't made enough progress toward racial equality. And there's some skepticism, particularly among Blacks, that Black people will ever have equal rights with whites. And again, that was a recent study by the Pew Research Center. As a dad, how do you discuss race with your children?
Well, my oldest son, he's 34, and you know, growing up, I grew up in the West End, which was most dominantly Black as I was growing up, which was once before I was there, it was mostly white. So it was, I would say most of the racism come with the police situation, you know, as far as you kind of got to carry yourself in a certain manner of being, you know, if you get pulled over, make sure you don't make certain moves or do anything out of the normal, which, you know, if you get pulled over, you just pretty much sit there and try to go by what they ask you to do, because that's mostly the racism that we had to deal with growing up. It's mostly, you know, dealing with the police as far as just hate crimes or anything. We really wasn't dealing with that because most of the whole neighborhood was pretty much Black.
Right.
And
so is that
go ahead.
Yeah, has that experience changed? You know, your oldest, you know, you were dealing with that and explaining that in a certain way. Is that has your message changed, or is it still, you know, certainly based on what we see in the news cycle on a regular basis? I would think that some of that message is still the same today with your younger kids.
Yes, it's exactly the same. And that's you know, being in an interracial relationship, because my first kids was by a Black female through my first wife, and then now, you know, I'm with Julie, and she's like got 2 white kids and I got two black kids, and we got one mixed together. So, and I was kind of, telling my oldest stepson, which is, white, that when all the Breonna Taylor and all that things was going on, I was like, now, if this situation would have been, he was the same age as my youngest son, which, they like 20 years apart. But if they was like 19 and 18 and they both was riding in the car in a situation where they get pulled over, they would probably treat him differently than they would treat my other son, knowing that they being brothers, but they look at them as being different.
Right.
And
That must be,
go ahead.
I have to say that must be really challenging, just as a parent, because you're parenting almost, and I hate to say it this way, but it's like two worlds, or two different ways of living in the world. That on the one hand, you have to communicate one message, and it doesn't apply in the other hand, which I can't imagine how challenging that is.
Yeah, that's the thing about it. It's like, as being a dad, it's no different, from a white male and a black male or Asian or whatever. A dad's gonna be a dad, but it's the things that a black man have to teach a younger black son differently than where a white male will have to treat his son. It's the
Right.
thing about, like, when growing up, you got to be like, all right, you got to come in at a certain time, make sure you're not hanging out in the streets, because in the neighborhood, in the dominantly black neighborhood, it's like, if you have past a certain time, you're pretty much in trouble, is what they look at, being out in the streets,
Right.
where kids play till 10, 11, or 12 o'clock in a all white neighborhood where, the police don't probably even ride through.
Right. So your oldest son is 34. Is that
Yeah. But
correct?
he'll be 34 in October.
Okay. And the youngest child you're parenting is
Is
how
3.
old?
He's 3, and he'll be
3.
actually in May. Yes.
So I guess to me, the most troubling thing I'm hearing is that, in 30 years of parenting, 3 decades, that the message that you have to give is the same. Again, if we go back to this quote I read, talking about the legacy of slavery and progress made or not made, you're kind of saying the same thing that they're saying, and that is, for you, for 30 years, the message has been, as a black person, or especially a black male out in the community encountering the police, there's a set of rules that you're going to have to follow to be safe, and that has not changed in your experience in 30 years. So that's a lot to think about, and I appreciate you sharing that with us and being frank about it. These are hard things to talk about, but I think important things to talk about. So I really value that you're giving us that input. And you talked about, you brought up Breonna Taylor, of course, very much in the news, and the news cycle is constant, right? I mean, you flip on the TV, there's always breaking news. And it seems like on the nightly news, on the daily news, there's always discussion of violent conflict, of death, and oftentimes it does involve the police. And how do you discuss, I guess, or how do you protect as a dad? And I'm thinking now of your younger children. How do you protect them from that constant drumbeat of bad news in the media or violence in the media that involves black children, that involves the police? How do you shield them from that, or can you?
It's really it's kind of with social media and everything going on now, and once the kids is at a certain age, they get cell phones, so pretty much you can get on your phone and find anything out, and it's you kind of really at a certain age got to just pretty much be telling reality what reality really is. You kind of, can't really sugarcoat it. You just got to be point blank straight to them and just kind of tell them what's really going on.
Right. So how, with your younger kids, how do they take in that information? Do they, I guess there's intellectually understanding something, but then there's also emotionally dealing with something. How do your kids take in that information?
Well, my son, just kind of my youngest son, he's kind of really too young to really be in it. But my daughter, she's right now at she just turned 14 in January, and I try to always, put in her head, be careful who you hang with, and you got to always watch your surroundings, no matter where you at or who you with. But you got to always kind of be always 24/7 looking over your shoulder almost, because you never know what's going on.
So within your family, with multiple kind of with different races within your own home, is there a conversation about the fairness of that? Or it is the reality, but what is the dialogue like in the home when you all talk about how it is in the world and what's going on in the news, and how do they talk to each other about it?
Well, my stepdaughter, she's in a relationship with another mixed guy, so she's kind of see both sides of it. But my stepson, he kind of like one-sided, and he don't actually see the I would say the black side of it, because most of his friends is around other white males, so it's kind of hard to kind of be on the outside looking in and actually see what's really going on the other side if you're not involved with the situation.
Right.
And
Interesting.
I try to explain coming up how I was dealt with and the things that I had to deal with growing up, and kind of tell them that being black, you always had to do things extra hard, as far as even getting jobs and just doing anything as far as getting ahead in life.
So who did you look to from a parenting perspective? Did you have role models, or did you have an idea of how you wanted to parent? What kind of influenced you as a father?
My father and mom, they was together for 54 years, and before my father passed, and he was like a mentor and who I looked up to. But as a young child, it was kind of hard because it seemed like he was kind of strict on us, because he was a protector.
Right.
He never really told us why we couldn't do things. He'd be like, "No, you can't go out Friday night. It's crazy," or whatever. Stay in the house weekends. When it's time to have fun, we had to stay home a lot, unless we did family things or was with somebody that he trusted that we can go out and have a decent time with. But as far as just hanging out, that was, I didn't really get to do that till I was probably 18, 19 years old.
Right. So do you feel like you had to continue that style of parenting in terms of shielding your kids, or do you feel like you're more permissive, or where did you land on that?
I think, being a father, you only get one shot. It's kind of, if you got 10 fathers in the room, each father's going to have a different scenario of what you should do. And
Right.
I don't beat my father down for doing it, because I feel like he did a great job with all the kids. And I kind of just teach my kids to be like, to do things the right way. When you do things the right way, hopefully you'll get the right results to come out of the situation.
Right. Personally speaking, I think that my view of my father changed dramatically once I was a parent myself. So, you talked about having a strict parent and a lot of rules, and I grew up with strict parents and a lot of rules, and my rules were different than my friends' rules, who maybe had more. They could stay out later and they could do some things that I was not allowed to do. So I can relate to that a little bit. As a young person, that bothered me. It made me mad.
Yeah.
I resented that. But then, when you're parenting yourself, you get a whole new perspective, don't you?
Yeah. It's a big, because you kind of, once you become a parent and you pretty much done been out in the world, you kind of know the bad that's out there that could destroy a child's quick.
Right.
A lot of bad that's out there.
Absolutely. Well, we'll wrap up with just kind of a lighter, I guess, conversation. What are some fun traditions that you have with your kids, or things you all like to do that you've done through the years?
I just, the thing about it, I try to do what I would call free fun. The things that don't go to the park, flying kites, ride bicycles, skateboards, the traditional fun that we did growing up as a kid.
Right.
And we actually go on trips, Kings Island, try to go Disney World and do, the normal fun too. But I just like spending as much time as I can with them, because like I always tell my kids, one day I'll be gone and all you have is memories, where the best memories is making the memories.
Right. Outstanding. So how do they react to that? Do they like free fun, as you put it?
Yeah, once they get out there and do it, because I'm the type, if it's a nice day, try to enjoy the outdoors, get outside and have some fun. If he's throwing football, playing basketball, baseball, whatever, just enjoy life. Because, as you get older, I would say teenagers, you're 15 to 16, everything. If you're not really involved in sports, it kind of fades away. You just kind of stuck from 15 to you're grown, and you next thing you know, 10 years have passed you by, you ain't done anything.
Right. Well, excellent, Lamont. I have to say again, I really appreciate you kind of volunteering to be our a guinea pig on our very first episode of this podcast. It's a new experience for me. Hopefully our little technical difficulties all come out in the wash, and that when we review the video, it all sounds good and looks good. But I really want to say I've enjoyed talking to you and hearing your perspective as a dad. I think a lot of dads will be interested in hearing what you've had to say. So thank you so much.
Okay, no problem.
All right. Well, you have a great night.
Okay, you too. Thanks.
Thanks, Lamont.